The film begins by showing a famous chef, Paul, who leads a culinary industry team called Hunger. Like its name, Chef Paul wants to make his customers always hungry because of the dishes served by the Hunger team. Therefore, rich people who invite him to cook will not hesitate to eat greedily because of the delicacy of the food from the Hunger team. The scene moved on to show a family's local restaurant that serves stir-fried noodles. The restaurant has family recipes passed down from generation to generation. And now, the restaurant is run by a girl named Aoi. At that time, there's a customer named Tone. He gave Hunger's business card and invited Aoi to work there. However, Aoi, who didn't know about Hunger, then asked her friends. And suddenly, they were very surprised. They thought this was a golden opportunity for Aoi so she could improve her cooking skills and become a famous chef like Paul. Chef Paul is indeed a #1 chef in Thailand. At this time, he was invited by many VIPs who wanted to taste his cooking. It's no wonder if they wanted to invite Chef Paul, they had to make a reservation in advance and pay him a fantastic price. The next day, Tone came back to pick up Aoi and took her to the Hunger restaurant. The kitchen looks so clean and tidy that it makes Aoi very amazed. That day, before joining the Hunger team, of course Aoi had to take a test. Chef Paul will match Aoi with a man who graduated from a culinary school to make a simple menu, fried rice. Knowing that, Aoi's opponent felt arrogant and thought the test was too easy. You can see that the fried rice made by these two participants was very different. Aoi's rival chose premium ingredients for his fried rice, while Aoi instead used leftover rice and mixed it with 2 eggs and some seasonings. After the fried rice was cooked, now it was Chef Paul's part to judge. Without tasting it, Chef Paul immediately told Aoi's opponent to go home, because the one who passed the test was Aoi. After that, Aoi officially joined the Hunger team. She was then asked to clean up and replace her clothes with a chef jacket with the words Hunger. After that, Tone introduces Aoi to all the Hunger members who have different tasks. And Aoi will definitely get her own tasks. But for now, Tone still assumes that Aoi will be an assistant chef equal to himself. After that, Chef Paul gathered them and said that in a few days, they will get an invitation to cook at the birthday of a high-ranking officer. They plan to serve a meat and blood-themed dish, and of course with high-quality meat. Chef Paul assigns Aoi as the person in charge. He said that the meat must be sliced very thin and cooked well done. Before that, Chef Paul asked Aoi to slice the meat. Aoi, who has never cooked with premium ingredients, finds it very difficult. She failed many times and was snapped by Chef Paul. Aoi was tested again to cook the Wagyu beef. As before, she kept failing and made mistakes many times, because everything had to be exactly according to Chef Paul's wishes. As a result, Chef Paul ordered Aoi to keep practicing. If tomorrow morning she leaves and gives up, then she will lose her chance to become someone special. Aoi can't stand all the nagging from Chef Paul, so she intends to leave. But after considering everything, she suddenly changes her mind and returns to the kitchen. Now, Aoi is determined to keep practicing until she can cook well-done A5 Wagyu beef. The next day, the Hunger team found Aoi sleeping in the kitchen after she practiced all night. They can see the oil and fire splash marks on her hands. It's describing how hard she practiced. And it turned out that Aoi's efforts were not in vain. She finally managed to cook the meat according to Chef Paul's wishes. Long story short, the day of the event finally arrived. The event was filled with important people in Thailand, including a culinary entrepreneur named TOS. He wanted to sponsor the Hunger for a long time, but Chef Paul always refused. After the event started, Aoi was then asked to cook A5 Wagyu beef in front of all the guests. People were amazed by her skills, especially the taste of the dish was so delicious that the guests licked their plates to finish it. Amazed by Aoi's ability, TOS immediately gave his business card to her. Since that day, Aoi was assigned to accompany Tone to places that provide the best ingredients for cooking. From the start, Chef Paul always buys the best quality ingredients even though he has to pay a high price. For him, only the best ingredients will create delicious dishes. The next day, the Hunger team is ready for the next event. Everyone looked busy, but Aoi didn't even get assigned anything. When she asked Chef Paul, she was instead assigned to wash the dishes, mop the floor, and take out the trash. Hearing that, of course Aoi didn't accept it and protested to Chef Paul. Then, Chef Paul said that everyone there was carrying out tasks according to his orders. Just because Aoi received praise from the guests yesterday, it doesn't mean she is an important person in the team. Chef Paul tests Aoi's chopping speed by comparing her to a member of the Hunger team. At that time, Aoi was injured and proved that she is unfit for the position. When Aoi was at home, she tried to cook steak for her family. When Aoi's family tasted the food, they confessed that they did not like it. They prefer the stir-fried noodles made by their father. This finally made Aoi realize that even food can show social inequality. Poor people define food to survive, while rich people define food to satisfy their lust with delicious and quality dishes. In the kitchen, an unpleasant incident suddenly occurred. At that time, a member of the Hunger team, Ken, was seen smoking while cooking. Chef Paul, who just came to see this, feeling very upset. He really doesn't like Ken's behavior, especially if the cigarette falls into the food that will be served to their customers. Not only that, Chef Paul also announces that there is a thief among them. That person is known to have stolen some high-quality meat. Before Chef Paul checked the CCTV, he wanted the person to confess, because if not, then that person would have to deal with the police. In the midst of this tension, one of the members finally admitted that he, who had been a member of the Hunger team for a long time, wanted to taste delicious food like the rich people do. Of course, Chef Paul just couldn't tolerate it, so the man was immediately fired. Shortly, the next invitation finally arrived. This time, the Hunger team would cook delicious food for a family. The family's expression looked very strange when they tasted the food from the Hunger team. Then, when Tone would deliver the soup, Chef Paul suddenly threw it away because there was a prawn in the soup. Prawn is one of the child's allergies, so even one spoonful of soup could kill her. As a result, Chef Paul quickly cooked a replacement soup using tap water and makeshift ingredients. Since then, Aoi felt that there was something strange about Chef Paul's behavior. After they finished the job, Chef Paul was angry at all his members. It was revealed that the person who put the prawns was the chef assistant named Dang. Chef Paul was furious with him, and suddenly Dang stabbed Chef Paul with a knife. Chef Paul, who was hospitalized, then visited by Aoi. She brought a bowl of stir-fried noodles for Chef Paul because he didn't want to eat food from the hospital. Chef Paul then talked about the reason why he became a chef. It started when he was little, and at that time, his mother worked as a maid in a rich man's house. That day, the rich family was seen eating something called caviar. So, out of curiosity about the taste, Chef Paul stole a small jar of caviar and wanted to try it. Unfortunately, he was found out, and their son shouted at him as a thief. The jar of caviar then fell from his hands and finally shattered. The employer was furious and would cut Paul's mother's salary for several months. While cleaning up the scattered caviar on the floor, Chef Paul also tried it and found that it didn't taste good. Since then, he was determined to become a chef so that rich people could crawl to try his cooking. Arriving home, Aoi heard the news that her father was taken to the hospital because he was tired of cooking at the restaurant. It made Aoi feel guilty because since working at the Hunger, Aoi could no longer help her father. When she was in the hospital, Aoi saw news about a family that had previously invited the Hunger team. They reportedly committed suicide because they was in debt. This made Aoi even more confused because if the problem was like that, why did they have to invite the Hunger team even though they can use the money to pay off the debts? That's how big Chef Paul's influence is in the culinary world, so people are willing to do anything to try his cooking. Aoi's suspicions got worse when Chef Paul didn't hesitate to cook a hornbill. Though, he knew that it was a protected bird species. Can't stand Chef Paul's ambition, Tone and Aoi finally decided to quit from the Hunger. After stopping working at the Hunger, Aoi had to have another income, considering she had to pay her father's hospital bills. Aoi finally remembered TOS, who at that time had given her a business card. Of course, TOS, who saw Aoi, immediately greeted her with pleasure. He even immediately invested in Aoi by making her a very luxurious restaurant. As a head chef, Aoi is required to make a special menu which is her trademark. With the help of several people, Aoi continues to innovate so she finally can make a menu according to her wishes. Unexpectedly, Aoi's dish menu received attention from various groups. Aoi became very famous and many people queued to try her cooking. Long story short, Aoi's team was invited by one of Thailand's top celebrities named Melky. Unexpectedly, at the event, Aoi's team was paired with Chef Paul's team. Dish after dish from the two chefs made the guests very satisfied. Aoi's team cooks dishes that are meaningful and made with love, while Chef Paul, as usual, presents food with a dirty and bold concept. Chef Paul tells Aoi that she could never fight against him, because as a famous chef, people have high expectations and always believe that all his dishes must be delicious. In the midst of that situation, some police suddenly came and arrested Chef Paul. He was arrested because Ton had spread a video where Chef Paul was cooking hornbills. And of course, this is because of the support from TOS. What Aoi is seeing right now seems to show that to become someone special, they will sacrifice anything. Aoi also just realized that her ambition is to compete with Chef Paul. She lost time with her family who always supported her. Aoi doesn't want to end up like Chef Paul, so she finally decided to go home and return to run her family's local stir-fried noodles restaurant as before, and the film ends. Indeed, for the sake of achieving dreams, there will be many things that we have to sacrifice. People who become celebrities have to give up their whole life for public consumption, so that they no longer have privacy. Just like people who want to become famous chefs, they must always try to satisfy their customers and continue to show innovation in cooking, so that not infrequently they are forced to do illegal things to make their dreams come true. So, whatever you are doing now, always do it wholeheartedly. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next video.